Welcome to EntreView. Today, we're decoding the billionaire brain. Not to worship wealth, but to understand the cognitive patterns and daily habits that separate high-performing founders from everyone else. These aren't just success tips. They're fundamental rewirings of how you think, decide, and execute. The first principle: think in systems, not tasks. Billionaire founders don't manage to-do lists. They architect systems. When Jeff Bezos built Amazon, he wasn't thinking about selling books. He was designing a system that could scale infinitely across any product category. When Elon Musk approaches a problem, he breaks it down to physics' first principles and rebuilds from there. This distinction matters. Task-oriented thinking keeps you busy. Systems thinking creates leverage. A task is responding to customer emails. A system is building automated customer support that scales without your involvement. A task is posting on social media. A system is creating content workflows that generate visibility while you sleep. Start asking different questions. Instead of, "What do I need to do today?" ask, "What system would make this unnecessary?" Instead of, "How do I solve this problem?" ask, "How do I build something that prevents this problem from recurring?" This shift in thinking compounds over time, creating exponential rather than linear growth. Decision velocity over decision perfection. High-performing founders make decisions fast. Not recklessly, strategically fast. They understand that in business, speed of execution often matters more than perfection of strategy. While competitors are still analyzing, they're already iterating based on real market feedback. Jeff Bezos categorizes decisions into two types. Type 1 decisions are irreversible and consequential. They require careful deliberation. Type 2 decisions are reversible. They should be made quickly by individuals or small groups. Most decisions are Type 2, but most people treat them like Type 1. Billionaire founders also embrace something uncomfortable. They're willing to be wrong quickly rather than right slowly. They'd rather make a decision, test it, and pivot within a week than spend a month reaching the perfect decision. This doesn't mean carelessness. It means recognizing that market feedback is more valuable than internal debate. Build your own decision-making framework. For reversible decisions, give yourself a time limit, maybe 10 minutes for minor choices, an hour for moderate ones. Trust your instincts more. You have more expertise than you give yourself credit for. Your gut feeling is often your subconscious processing patterns you haven't consciously recognized. Extreme ownership of time. Billionaires are obsessive about time, not in a stressful way, in a strategic way. They understand that time is the only truly finite resource. Money can be made, opportunities can be created, but time, once spent, is gone forever. Warren Buffett famously keeps a relatively empty calendar. He said no to thousands of opportunities to preserve time for deep thinking about the few decisions that really matter. Bill Gates used to schedule think weeks, where he'd isolate himself to read and reflect. These aren't luxuries, they're strategic necessities. High performers protect their time through aggressive prioritization. They say no to almost everything. When you see a billionaire's schedule, you don't see it packed with meetings. You see large blocks of uninterrupted time for high-leverage activities. They're not trying to do more things. They're trying to do fewer things with greater impact. Audit your own time ruthlessly. Track every hour for a week. You'll be shocked at where your time actually goes. Then ask yourself, what activities are in my unique zone of genius? What absolutely requires my personal involvement? Everything else should be delegated, automated, or eliminated. Create your own time blocks for different types of thinking. Maybe mornings are for strategic work when your mind is freshest. Afternoons for meetings and collaboration. Evenings for learning and growth. Protect these blocks like you'd protect an investor meeting, because that deep work time is where you build your billion-dollar future. Relentless focus on learning velocity. Billionaire founders are learning machines. They read voraciously. They seek out people smarter than themselves. They view every experience as data to inform future decisions. But here's the key. They don't just consume information, they metabolize it into action. Elon Musk taught himself rocket science by reading textbooks and interrogating experts. Warren Buffett spends 80% of his day reading. Bill Gates reads 50 books a year. Charlie Munger built a latticework of mental models from multiple disciplines. These aren't people born with superhuman intelligence, they're people who compounded their learning over decades. The pattern isn't just about reading more, it's about learning faster and applying better. High performers extract principles from everything they study. They look for patterns across different fields. They connect insights from psychology to business, from biology to technology, from history to strategy. They also learn from failure faster than most people learn from success. When something doesn't work, they dissect it immediately. What were the assumptions? Where did reality diverge from the plan? What second-order effects did we miss? This rapid feedback loop accelerates their growth curve. Build your own learning system. Don't just read randomly. Read strategically within and across fields relevant to your goals. After reading something valuable, write a summary in your own words. Even better, explain it to someone else. Teaching forces clarity. Apply at least one insight from everything you learn. Knowledge without application is entertainment, not education. The 10x thinking pattern. Average founders think incrementally. They ask, how do we improve by 10%? Billionaire founders think exponentially. They ask, how do we become 10 times better? This isn't just optimism, it's a completely different strategic framework. When you aim for 10% improvement, you optimize existing processes. When you aim for 10x improvement, you have to start over with a blank sheet. You can't get to 10x through incremental changes. You need fundamentally different approaches. This forces innovation rather than optimization. Larry Page instilled this in Google's culture. He'd push teams to think bigger, not just better. When Google Maps was in development, they didn't ask, how do we make slightly better directions? They asked, how do we photograph every street in the world? That's 10x thinking. 10x thinking also filters opportunities differently. When you're aiming for incremental growth, lots of opportunities look attractive. When you're aiming for exponential impact, most opportunities become distractions. You can only pursue a few things at 10x level, so you become ruthless about focus. Practice this reframing. Take your biggest goal and multiply it by 10. Now ask yourself, what would have to be true to achieve that? What assumptions would need to change? What completely different approach would be required? You'll find that the path to 10x is often simpler than the path to incremental improvement because it forces you to eliminate everything non-essential. Building anti-fragile mental models. Nassim Taleb introduced the concept of anti-fragility, systems that gain from disorder. Billionaire founders don't just build resilient businesses, they build anti-fragile ones that get stronger from volatility and uncertainty. They do this by building optionality into everything. They maintain multiple paths to success. They structure deals where downside is limited, but upside is unlimited. They create situations where they have asymmetric risk-reward, where potential gains far exceed potential losses. Richard Branson exemplifies this. He'd negotiate contracts where Virgin could exit partnerships if things went poorly, but stay involved if they went well. He built a portfolio of ventures where any single failure wouldn't destroy the whole, but any single success could be transformative. This extends to mental models. Billionaire founders hold their beliefs loosely. They're not attached to being right. They're committed to finding truth. When new evidence appears, they update their thinking quickly. This intellectual flexibility is a superpower in rapidly changing environments. Develop your own anti-fragile approaches. Structure your business so you have multiple revenue streams. Build your skills so you have multiple ways to create value. Design your life so you can handle volatility without catastrophic outcomes. Create asymmetric opportunities where you risk little but could gain exponentially. Deep work as competitive advantage. In a world of constant distraction, the ability to do deep work has become a rare and valuable skill. Billionaire founders protect their capacity for deep, focused thinking like it's their most precious asset. Because it is. Deep work is where breakthrough thinking happens. It's where you solve complex problems. It's where you see connections others miss. It's where strategy gets developed and refined. You cannot do deep work while checking notifications every 5 minutes. High performers create environments for deep work. They have offices with no distractions. They take walks without phones. They schedule blocks where they're completely unreachable. This isn't antisocial, it's strategic. Some of the most impactful business decisions have been made during these protected thinking periods. They also recognize that deep work is cognitively expensive. You can't do it for 8 hours straight. Most people can manage 3 to 4 hours of genuine deep work per day. But those hours, properly used, create more value than 12 hours of fragmented attention. Design your days around deep work. Identify your peak cognitive hours. For most people, this is morning. Block that time for your most important strategic thinking. Turn off notifications. Close unnecessary tabs. Put your phone in another room. Treat this time as sacred because the insights you generate here compound into your future success. The network effect of relationships. Billionaire founders understand that your network isn't just who you know, it's about the strength and quality of those relationships. They invest heavily in building genuine connections with world-class people. They seek out individuals smarter than themselves in specific domains. They build relationships with operators who've solved problems they're facing. They cultivate connections with potential partners, customers, and mentors. But they don't collect business cards. They build real relationships based on mutual value creation. High performers are also remarkably generous within their networks. They make introductions. They share insights. They help others succeed without immediate expectation of return. This generosity compounds. People want to help those who've helped others. Your reputation in your network becomes self-reinforcing. They're also strategic about their time with people. A dinner with the right person can be worth more than a month of independent work. The right introduction can unlock opportunities that would take years to develop alone. The right advice can help you avoid costly mistakes. Invest in your network deliberately. Reach out to people you admire. Offer value before asking for anything. Make yourself useful to people ahead of you on the path. Maintain relationships consistently, not just when you need something. Your network becomes a form of compound interest. Small investments made consistently create exponential returns over time. Embracing calculated risk. The average person seeks safety. The billionaire founder understands that the biggest risk is taking no risk at all. But they're not gamblers. They're strategic risk takers who understand probability and asymmetry. They take risks when potential upside far exceeds potential downside. They risk capital and time on opportunities where failure costs relatively little, but success creates transformative outcomes. They run experiments constantly, knowing most will fail, but the few that succeed will more than compensate. Peter Thiel talks about definite optimism versus indefinite optimism. Indefinite optimists believe the future will be better, but don't know how, so they diversify and hedge. Definite optimists have a specific vision and take concentrated bets on making it real. Billionaire founders are definite optimists. They're also willing to endure criticism and skepticism. When you're doing something genuinely innovative, most people won't understand it initially. Amazon lost money for years while Wall Street questioned its strategy. Tesla was mocked as a foolish bet. In both cases, the founders maintained conviction despite widespread doubt. Develop your own relationship with risk. Start by taking small, calculated risks that stretch your comfort zone. Launch that product before it's perfect. Have that difficult conversation. Make that introduction. Put your ideas out publicly. Each successful navigation of uncertainty builds your risk capacity for larger bets. The compound effect of daily habits. Billionaire success isn't built on occasional heroic efforts. It's built on consistent daily habits that compound over years and decades. Warren Buffett didn't become a billionaire through one great trade. He became a billionaire through consistent daily reading and investing for over 70 years. The daily habits themselves seem mundane. Read for an hour. Exercise. Review key metrics. Reflect on decisions. Have meaningful conversations. None of these create dramatic short-term results, but compounded over time, they create extraordinary outcomes. High performers also understand keystone habits, behaviors that trigger positive cascades in other areas. Exercise might lead to better sleep, which leads to better decisions, which leads to better business outcomes. Morning routines might create momentum that shapes your entire day. Regular reflection might improve decision quality across every domain. They protect these habits fiercely. When travel disrupts routines, they adapt rather than abandon. When crises emerge, they maintain the practices that keep them sharp. These habits aren't luxuries to be sacrificed when busy. They're the foundation that enables everything else. Identify your own compound habits. What daily practices would, if maintained for a decade, transform your capabilities? Maybe it's deep work every morning. Maybe it's learning something new every day. Maybe it's connecting with key relationships weekly. Choose habits that align with your 10x goals, then protect them with extreme discipline. The strategic use of constraints. Counterintuitively, billionaire founders often create artificial constraints that force better thinking. Constraints breed creativity. Unlimited resources often lead to unfocused effort. Artificial scarcity forces prioritization and innovation. When Amazon was young, Bezos insisted on maintaining startup-level frugality even as they raised capital. Door desks instead of fancy furniture. No expensive perks. This constraint forced intense focus on customer value rather than internal comfort. It became part of the culture. High performers use time constraints too. Parkinson's law states that work expands to fill available time. If you give yourself a week for a project, it takes a week. Give yourself a day and you find ways to compress and prioritize. Billionaire founders use aggressive deadlines to force focus and decision-making. They also constrain themselves strategically. They might commit to only working on one major project at a time. They might limit their team size deliberately to maintain agility. They might restrict product features to maintain simplicity. These constraints aren't limitations, they're focusing mechanisms. Apply strategic constraints to your own work. Set aggressive deadlines that force you to identify what's essential. Limit your work in progress to force completion. Restrict resources on new projects to force scrappy creativity. Sometimes, the best way forward is through a narrower path. The long game mentality. Perhaps the most distinctive pattern in billionaire thinking is their time horizon. They're playing a game measured in decades, not quarters. This fundamentally changes how they evaluate opportunities and allocate resources. Jeff Bezos is famous for asking, "What won't change in 10 years?" He built Amazon around immutable customer desires, selection, low prices, fast delivery. These truths allowed long-term investments with confidence. Short-term players chase trends. Long-term players build on fundamentals. This long-term orientation allows them to withstand short-term volatility. They can take hits that would destroy quarter-focused competitors. They can invest in capabilities that won't pay off for years. They can ignore critics focused on immediate results. It also changes how they view learning and skill development. A high performer might invest thousands of hours learning something that won't generate returns for years because they're optimizing for decade-level outcomes, not monthly results. Most people overestimate what they can achieve in a year and underestimate what they can achieve in 10 years. Billionaire founders flip this. They set aggressive 10-year visions, then work backward to identify the capabilities and systems needed. This creates patient urgency, relaxed about daily fluctuations, but intensely focused on directional progress. Extend your own time horizon. Where do you want to be in 10 years? What capabilities would you need to get there? What investments should you make now that won't pay off until much later? Start thinking and acting like someone playing the long game, because the long game is where compounding creates extraordinary outcomes. Applying the billionaire mindset. You don't need billions to think like a billionaire. These cognitive patterns are available to anyone willing to rewire their thinking. Start with one pattern that resonates most. Maybe it's 10x thinking. Maybe it's extreme time ownership. Maybe it's building learning velocity. Implement that one pattern completely before adding another. Depth beats breadth. Mastering one high-leverage habit creates more value than dabbling in many. Once it's automatic, layer in another pattern. Over time, these accumulate into a transformed way of operating. Remember that these founders weren't born thinking this way. They developed these patterns through experience, failure, and deliberate practice. You're seeing the result of decades of refinement. Give yourself permission to develop these capabilities over time. The billionaire brain isn't about genius. It's about better systems, faster learning, clearer thinking, and longer time horizons. It's about making better decisions consistently over long periods. Anyone can develop these capabilities with focused practice. Your business doesn't need to reach billions to benefit from billionaire thinking. These patterns create better outcomes at every scale. A solopreneur using systems thinking and 10x frameworks will outperform competitors stuck in task-oriented, incremental mindsets. A small team embracing deep work and learning velocity will punch above its weight. This is EntreView, reminding you that the way you think shapes the results you create. Master the thinking patterns of high performers, and you master the inputs that determine outcomes. The billionaire brain isn't reserved for billionaires. It's available to anyone committed to thinking better.